I'll pay you back. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome to the underground laboratory where typically we create robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. But lately we've been taking a little departure and doing some Stranger Things fan art as a series called Drawing Stranger Things, where I'm going to take the core cast of kids from Stranger Things and just do my little rendition of a cartoon version of them. And so we take that, we start with our sketchbook, which I have today. We are going to do Mike. So, you know, can you see that? So anyway, so we got the sketch of Mike. We're going to digitize this, put it in the computer, and then we're going to, you know, color it, draw it, do all that kind of stuff. And if you've seen any of those other drawings I've done, you kind of know what we're going for here. So yeah, let's get to drawing Mike. Okay, I've scanned my sketch of Mike that I did in my sketchbook with my Prismacolor Colorase pencil. It's just an orange pencil. You can use whatever color you want. I just decided to use orange on that day, and I apologize for not showing the actual drawing, but I just kind of had my sketchbook with me one day and I was just drawing. I didn't really have a camera with me, but if you want to see sort of the process of drawing, at least a digital version, if you want to check out the drawing I did of Will Byers, that first one that I did that all digital, and I digitally sketched that in Photoshop. So, but anyway, so after I've sketched everything in, then I go ahead and use my pen tool in Illustrator, and I just put a solid outline around the character. And now I'm going in with my blob tool, which will give you a little bit of different line weights and things. It's almost just kind of like working with a digital brush, and that's what I'm doing now to kind of fill in the inside of this character. And then after that, we'll start flattening the colors, and then we'll do some shading and everything, and then just add some little effects and some things here and there. But anyway, so yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about Mike, but I also wanted to talk about just Stranger Things in general, and kind of like that, not the opening scene that kind of took place outside of Hawkins, but once we get back into Hawkins and we're reintroduced to Mike and the gang and everything like that, the first thing you see is where they're just gathering all their change to go out to the arcade. And I remember that, living in the, you know, basically through the 80s, and that was a big deal, just finding quarters and things like that to go to the arcade. And I was never really that great at video games. There were some that I liked to play. I used to like to play, which ones did I like to play? Tron, the Star Wars, that first Vector Star Wars game. I like to play those, but I was never really any good at video games. I guess I just never spent much time in them. With them, and that kind of goes to today, which I guess is sort of good because it's not as much of a time suck, because I'm not big into video games. I have more time to draw and create and things like that. But anyway, yeah. But the arcades, regardless whether you were good at video games or whatever, it was just fun to go, and I like pinball and all that kind of stuff as well. But always trying to find the change to go out and do that, and Dragon's Lair being a big part of that. That game was like, I think it was over $1 to play, and that game was hard, and I never played it just because it was so expensive and you would just die right away. I mean, it's basically a series of combinations. If you've ever played Dragon's Lair, if you know up, down, you know, whatever the direction is, because it's almost like choose your own adventure, but just at the right time you got to move the joystick one way or another. But later on, when they released that on the computer where you don't have to sink all these quarters in, I sat there, and it's all memorization, you know, you got to just know the right path, and I was able to get through the whole Dragon's Lair game just because I wanted to see the animation. So yeah, later on, back when that was released, I kind of got to do that. But so if you're a Stranger Things fan like me, and you watched a lot of these videos on YouTube that, you know, just they kind of go into the different references and just all the little homages and things like that the Duffer Brothers paid to just other films in the 80s. And I've watched a lot of those videos, but there's one thing that no one's ever brought up, or I don't know how many people have caught. One little reference, and that's because it's something that's kind of obscure, but it was a big part of my childhood as far as video games. But when you kind of zoom into the scene where they go into the arcade, and they've got that spinning, it's like a triangular sign, and it says arcade, and it's kind of spinning around. That logo was taken, it's almost exactly like a logo from a video game console called Odyssey 2. Now, a lot of people don't remember that. It came out sort of around the same time as the Atari 2600, which was, I mean, Atari was huge. I never had Atari. I had the Odyssey 2. And it's kind of one of those weird things, almost like VHS versus beta. And again, we're going old school. So if you're younger, you probably don't know what the heck he's talking about. You might not even know like what a DVD is, because everything's digital now. But back with video cassettes, there was the VHS and there was the beta. And the beta never really caught on, even though the beta was like superior quality. But that was kind of the way it was with the Odyssey 2 video game system. It was put out by Magnavox, and it really was, I mean, it was a lot better. I think the price point may have been higher than, and justifiably so, but it may have been higher than the Atari, which may have been part of the problems, but it just really never caught on. And there's a number of reasons. One, because they never would license any other properties. Like, that's one of the smart things that Atari did, was they licensed like arcade games. But Odyssey 2 kind of had just knockoffs. They didn't have Donkey Kong, they had a game called Pickaxe Pete. And they didn't have Pac-Man, and they had a game called Casey Munchkin. And they were very similar in a lot of ways. The theme was different, but the gameplay was very similar. You know, so there was that. Then they had a lot of really cool original games. There was one that I really liked to play called Monkey Shines. But they had, in addition to just the video games, they had all kind of little expansions and things like that. They had this device that you could plug in. You just put it in where the cartridges. It was like a big box that fit where the cartridges go, and it was like a voice sort of modulator or whatever. And the other thing the Odyssey had was it had a keyboard. It had a built-in keyboard, and you could basically type verbatim kind of what you wanted this thing to say. And with the voice modulator, it would come out. It would sound kind of like a Cylon for the old Battlestar Galactica, very robotic and everything. But it's really cool, and you can do different. You could program different sounds and music and stuff. That was cool. They had these games that were like partial video games, like on-screen games, but it also had a component that was like a board game, and they would have these little transparencies that would fit over the keyboard, because the keyboard was one of those flat keyboards. It didn't have actual buttons that you press down. It was just sort of a plastic thing, and underneath you would press down and it would do its thing. But they had these little transparencies you would put over, and you could put little characters on the thing, and when you touch them on certain places on a map, it would interact with the game. And then they had a whole separate, like a physical board game with pieces and everything. They had one that was very kind of Lord of the Rings-esque, and they had 3 games like that, and they had a couple of them, and that was really cool. But it just was a really cool system. It was better than, like I said, Atari, although it just didn't have the games. Maybe the price point was more, and it just never caught on. So most people have never even heard of it. And the other thing that was really cool was the box art. The box art on all the games was just very cool, like super stylish, airbrushed. I mean, everything, the branding looked really great. Like with Atari games, they all look kind of different and everything. The artwork is just really cool. I would, if you're into video games and you haven't heard of the Odyssey 2 by Magnavox, put out in the 80s, definitely check it out and look at that logo and compare it. And you can even do a Google search or whatever, but you can compare it to the arcade logo that's kind of spinning when they go in, and it's the exact same type of lettering and everything. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's Odyssey 2. And I can't tell anyone because no one else knows about it, but unless super video game retro nerds may know about it. But I wish I still had mine. I thought it was in storage, but something happened to it, so unfortunately I lost that and all the games and everything. But I do miss it because that was a lot of fun. But anyway, back to the drawing, back to Mike. Right now we're just kind of adding some shading after we flatted and adding some colors and things like that. But yeah, so Mike in this season of Stranger Things 2, he's kind of had a little different story. I mean, before I think he was sort of like the central character, whereas in this time around, I think he took a little bit of a backseat, just because I think the big part of the last season was because just him and Eleven, and because they didn't really have very much interaction through this season, because Eleven was away, and he was always searching for her. There was a little thing like he kind of heard her voice through the walkie-talkie, so he kind of knew he was out there, so he was kind of obsessed in that. So because of that you didn't get that that interaction between him and Eleven, and he was sort of separated from his friends because he's more preoccupied with that. So a little different, but that was kind of cool, because whereas before he was kind of the main character, as we move on, we kind of get a little more, you know, the idea that this is more of an ensemble cast, that maybe Mike's not so much the main guy, he's part of the group, you know, and like Will, definitely, because he was gone for the first season for the most part, and he definitely had a bigger part. But the thing I really liked in this season was just him and Will, and him understanding kind of what Will was going through when other people really, I mean, Joyce, Will's mom, yes, definitely understood and wanted to help, but Mike had a different perspective where he kind of looked at something that could be, you know, definitely a bad thing with him, kind of with Will and this whole thing possessing him, and saying, hey, you could be a spy, you could use this to your advantage, and I think that really helped Will and everything. And I just kind of love that he was just like a true friend, and that's what I did like about Mike in this season. So anyway, just wrapping up this drawing of Mike and talk a little bit about games and stuff, and that was fun. All right, so that is Mike from Stranger Things, and we are rounding the corner on this series. I think we're going to do one more, and then we'll get sort of back to our regularly scheduled programming. But before I go, like I always do, I just wanted to mention my comic book, because if you're a fan of Stranger Things, I think you might also be a fan of my comic book, Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie story. It's kind of like Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. It takes place in the 80s, so it's kind of got that same feel. I've been working it out for a while, way before Stranger Things came out. And when I discovered Stranger Things, I'm like, everyone was like contacting me, let me know, you got to check out this thing. It's exactly everything you like, because they know that I'm into this stuff, and that's the kind of stuff I like to do with my comics and everything. So if you think you might be into that, you can find that at Serkworks.com, and there's 3 issues available. This is issue 3, the current issue. I'm working on issue 4 right now, and hopefully after this whole series is done, we'll get back to a little more of that stuff. So anyway, I will see you guys later. That is all. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me here in the Art Lab. There's a lot of other great content on the channel, so click that subscribe button and you won't miss a thing. If you're an aspiring evil genius, visit Serkworks.com for all your mad science supply needs. And if you want to contact me, hit me up in the comments section or follow me on social media. I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you then.